he, unable to see, one day he was in his apartment and the power went out. Now this is let's get the symbolism in this if you can. The power went out. Now for those of you who haven't been to this apartment where he's at, or this complex, in the hallways there are no windows. The only windows are in the actual apartment buildings themselves. So in these hallways it was pitch black, it was dark. This doesn't affect the blind man very much that lives there. He knows how to get from point A to point B, and he knows the place very well because he lives there. He knows how to get to the cafeteria, he knows how to get to his room, he knows how to get to this place and that and the other. But the people who were caught off guard in darkness, just as the day of the Lord comes, that's how it happened when the power was cut.
Yes.
And they didn't know where they were going. Spiritually speaking, those who walk in darkness can't tell where they're going. And consequently, they cannot tell where they're going to end up. Now then, that's symbolic speaking of heaven and hell.
Yeah.
If you are in darkness, what that means is you can't see where you're going. If you can't see where you're going, you're not going to know where you'll end up. But thank God for Eddie in this situation, because Eddie knew the way. Amen. How many of us were lost in darkness before somebody came along and showed us the way?
Yeah.
Amen. Now then, I'm just going to continue on, because I actually wrote in the top of my Bible, I was going to talk about God's love. That He didn't have to show us any of it. He could have been a cruel God that, said, you know what, we messed up, and He could have left us to our own devices. We wouldn't have been worthy of the punishment that we would receive. We were just talking about the book of Samuel, and I thought Tim was going to mention the part where they opened the Ark of the Covenant and death came forward and killed them. And I was going to further explain that. Let's see. Oh, it's hanging up in the back, but it's rolled up. The Ark of the Covenant, it had a lid upon it with the two cherubim facing each other. The lid of the Ark of the Covenant had a name. It was the mercy seat. Now there was a couple different things that were in the ark. The rod that budded, the manna from heaven, but the most iconic in the Ten Commandments. When these people opened the mercy seat, they were killed. Now then, let's put two and two together. Let's break this down and understand why. We could tell by reading through the book of Corinthians that the Old Covenant is referred to a covenant of death. I've preached on that a lot. That the Old Covenant was written on stone, brought down by Moses, and it was a covenant of death, and it brought forth glory. How much more will the glory be brought forth, which is the new covenant, that is righteousness, right? It was called the covenant of death because the law brings forth judgment. And we know that the wages of sin, or the judgment for our sins, is death. So when the people, the only thing that was protecting the people, the only thing that's protecting us as Christians from the judgment is mercy. It's the mercy of Christ, mercy of God. So when they were to take the mercy seat and they were to remove it, judgment was brought forth without mercy.
Right.
It's powerful. But going into the love of Christ, He didn't set these laws in place and say, if you've broken this, you die. In the New Testament, the new covenant that we have, that is mercy, that is grace, that is love, we have forgiveness. It says in Romans chapter 10, I think it's starting in the 9th verse, that if you profess with your mouth that Christ is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him, you'll be saved. Amen. Now there's a lot that goes into that. Amen. Now that I'm not going to sit here and try to say, you have to do this, that, and the other in order to be saved. That's another message for another day. But the point of the matter is that He didn't just leave us to our own devices. He didn't leave us without a hope. See, even the Jewish people, for the waiting of the coming of the Messiah, even they had hope. Amen. Moving on, it says, therefore let us not, verse 5, you are all children of light and the children of day. This refers to knowing Christ. We are not of the night nor of darkness. The believer is to be in a totally different, he's to be held in an entirely different standard. For somebody who calls themselves a Christian, do you know what Christian means? The word Christian means to be like Christ, or to be Christ-like.
Yeah.
That we are to be ambassadors of Christ. That we are living epistles. That we might be the only Bible that somebody ever reads. So when they do see us going through trials, tragedy, circumstance, whatever it may be, they might be able to see that this is how a Christian goes through it. Oh, and that's a scary thing. Because I know me personally, I don't always behave the best as I should. Amen? There's times where I get angry. Amen? And though I don't ever let myself curse, but still I might have a nasty attitude.
You're human.
I need to be careful.
Right. Human.
Because if I were to act in such a way, then they would have no hope to say where their peace might come from. Because if I was supposed to be the Christian, if I was supposed to be the one who was like Christ, if I was supposed to be the one that had the answers, if I was supposed to be the one that was able to have peace and to have joy, but they were to see me fall short, they'd lose hope.
Yes. Right.
The way we act affects others.
Yes.
Now then, we know that, some people will say, well, it's not my fault if that person sins. No, let's back it up here. If eating meat offends my brother, I will eat meat no more. We know from this passage, this is referring to in the book of Romans where people, they would eat the offerings that were sacrificed up to idols. Some people that were saved, they didn't have a lot. They weren't always the richest and the most proud, and that they had all this land and all these resources available to them where they could eat whatever they wanted. There are people that were hungry that didn't really have another means besides the meat that these people were throwing out. They would take an offering and they'd sacrifice it and they'd offer it up to their gods. And what they would do after the offering was burnt, they'd discard it. Well, the people that seen this, to them, what was cooked meat, they wanted to eat it because they were worse off, because they needed it. And we know from the passage in Corinthians where it refers to where it refers to the retelling of the Last Supper, for I have received of the Lord. And the same, hello? It speaks about, or Paul is talking about some people were there and didn't have anything to eat, and some people are showing up there, stuffing their faces, and not only doing that, but getting drunk. And then the brother next to you doesn't have enough to eat or drink. So we know that there were people that didn't have a lot in this time. When it spoke about the oh so many that were saved in the books of Acts, the thousands, not every last one of those people were members of good standing. That we are God's peculiar people. So for these people who were hungry to see that this meat had been discarded and it was theirs for the taking, they sought to eat it. And the other people who were much weller off, they decided to tell them, well, you can't eat that meat because it was sacrificed to other idols. Now then, if it's possible for you to restrain yourself from eating that, then by all means do. Because if eating meat offends my brother, I'll do it no more. This is more or less referring to if you deliberately choose to, even though you know it might be a stumbling block to somebody else. You're sinning against them. And you're causing it. It's just not good. Us as Christians, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard to be as Christ was. Now then, there's a very fine line that we need to walk as Christians. That we do what we are supposed to and what our convictions are as far as being led by the Spirit, but without condemning others. Amen. In the same token, we can't let somebody's offense withhold us from serving God. Amen. Yes. Perfect example. One day, I shared the story before.